Hello dear guests of our channel, our dear subscribers. I've been meaning to record this video for a very long time and I finally got around to it. A lot of you are interested how concrete fountains are properly assembled, and some people don't interest, and they go straight to work, and how often does it happen the fontaine is subsequently misused. For example, it turns into a flower bed, and there are plenty of cases like this, which is why I'll be training you to prevent these errors from occurring again. So what are concrete fountains, or what they call art concrete fountains? It's basically the same thing, and I'll also show you some of the fountains we have installed. Where does the installation of fontaine begin? First of all, by looking at the product you are buying, examine the dimensions of the product, weight to be known. When calculating the foundation, you also need to decide on the water pattern of the fontaine. Of course, not every manufacturer is going to tell you what additional equipment can be installed in the fontaine, and that's okay, because they only sell concrete elements, which is what you're allowed to refer to as a fontaine. Yes, there is of course an internet, but the first time a buyer confronted with this subject, and moreover is unlikely to be able to anticipate all the nuances. And yet, you are lucky if you are watching this video. After it, you'll become a real fontaine installer. For not to stretch this video for several hours, I'm gonna skip some topics, like as fundamentals of building trades. I recommend information to research. Probably, I should have recommended this content right away for professionals. But since I myself have been self-taught in the recent past, then I think the odds on the successful installation will really be a lot of people. A large number of different fontaine models are available. They are all different in appearance, size and weight. When installing equipment, the manufacturer only gives a standard recommendations. I'm going to tell you how to build a fontaine with additional equipment with the form of fountain ring. I will not tell you how to make a fountain ring, because we have a separate video on our channel. We start the installation of a fontaine by calculation and building a foundation. Made up our minds that a homemade fontaine will be installed in the fontaine that will be hidden in the concrete. The fontaine will have a drainage system, lighting and control cabinet. We aren't going to install filtering because it was not planned before. Upon agreement, the customer will change the water himself periodically. We install our fontaine on private property, where the customer lives, and where the finishing is done. We needed to prepare the work area very well, to protect the surrounding area from dust and dirt. We used polyethylene film and covering material. We used a chain of shoes due to forcing movements within the territory. Our foundation fabrication didn't follow the standard pattern. The customer had the entire yard and there is a base with the paving stones poured concrete slab which is reinforced with rod mesh. As required by the foundation, this type of fontaine requires a slab, which will be reinforced with a rebar into fields. Since that the customer has one cosplay, we have decided to use it as a sub-concrete layer, and our slab for the fontaine we decided to pour from the top and tie the rebar in one field. As you can know from the photo that we dismantled the diameter of the paving stones by 5-7 cm smaller than the diameter of the fontaine to avoid getting trimmed part. The manufacturer has informed us the inner and the outer diameter of the fontaine ring. So we hollowed out the slab and set the pump it at the right place. Since we decided to go with a 32 nozzle fontaine ring with a 5 mm diameter, and that requires a pump with a capacity of 36 cubic meters per hour. The resultant pit was reinforced, the formwork was set up and the sewer connection was started. The point is that at the side of the fontaine a storm drainage drain was located. Then in the subconcrete we drilled a space for deepening the pipeline for the fountain ring and then assembled the fontaine ring itself. After the installation of the fountain ring, pipes are connected to the pump and the operation of the center balls of the fontaine, and we have also laid feed-through sleeves of pulling lighting wires. And one more trick about electricity. This is the main bore sleeve connecting the fountain pit to the control cabinet. And a very important point about this pipe. The thing is, unlike the sleeves for internal wiring, the end of the sleeve of the control cabinet side was not below the top of the pool water level, where the water will just go through that pipe. In our case, this scattered case in parallel has come to full storm drainage, since we brought it to the height of the maximum water level that should be in the pool. After all utilities have been laid, we tied a field of rebar over the pipes, align the formwork to the diameter 5 cm less than the diameter of the inside of the fountain basin. Poured concrete with a braiding, I'll explain the 5 cm. And it's not pouring, the entire foundation is made flush with the paving stones. Right, in a normal situation it's recommended to pour the foundation when installing the fontaine, flush with the paving stones, since all the details of the fontaine cube. Aside from the paving stones, without recess, and as I said before, that we have an unusual situation. We use a customer stove, and we are putting in a fontaine ring to be embedded in concrete, so in order to cover the pipes with the right layer of concrete, the thickness of the foundation slab is additionally increased, so we are no longer on the same level as the paving stones. And in consultation with the customer, it was decided that the pool will be 5 or 7 cm shallower, as you can know from the photo. So 5 cm less than the inner diameter of the cube section the concrete is poured for future reference, to install with the side of the fontaine. So the foundation is poured, it should be wetted with water for 2 to 3 days after pouring. Better to cover with a wet cloth and leave to gain strength for at least 14 days. That's what we did. 14 days later, we returned to the facility and began the next phase of the work. It's an assembly on a ready-made foundation of the side of the pool, the fontaine, without the centerpiece for now. And now for the best part, that a lot of people just know about and regularly make mistakes. It's about preparing all the parts of the fontaine for installation. For proper assembly, all connection points of the fontaines must necessarily be cleaned of paint, notched in the right places, special grooves for the installation of lintels. And take note, you can see clearly from the photo that in stripping the paint, always set back a few centimeters inside. You just can't go all the way to the edge. It's a big risk. There is a good chance the edge will break off. About working with these fontaines, that the edges are vulnerable. And after all the parts have been prepared, you can proceed to the most difficult stage of fontaine assembly. It's a flatbed assembly. Then set them into levels. This is where you have to be extra careful and cautious. This procedure must be carried out by 2 people, whose actions should be synchronized as much as possible. Details of the side of this fontaine model are lightweight, so we assemble them by hand, without special equipment. I will show on photo how the onboard parts of other models are assembled. As you can see here, we already have a homemade crane system, where the weight of each part is significantly more weight of parts of this fontaine model. And to move the parts of this fontaine around on your fingers is just not going to work. So, how to correctly assemble the side of the fontaines? We start at level 1. Each level is assembled in 2 stages. The first step is the fitting height adjustment of parts, using a laser level exact diameter search, at which all the depths between the parts become equal. and will be about 5 mm. And you can only do it with wooden wedges. The thing is, all the parts of the fontaine are soft molded, and as a result have distorted geometry. As first assembly of parts, optimum values in clearances and heights are achieved. You can just put it together any other way. I'm talking especially about concrete fontaines. The second level is installation on a special mortar and proper filling of the joints to assemble the fountain part. We prepare the mortar, mix of cement, sand and heavy-duty tile adhesive in proportion of 1 part glue and 1 part ready mixed cement and sand mix in proportions 1:2. You need a bucket of clean water, sponge and a couple of small spatulas. The fountain parts should be handled as much as possible. Neat in clean clothes, and don't forget that the fountain parts have already been painted. Installation is as follows. Before proceeding, is necessary on a concrete base, use a marker to draw a projection of the exact location of the parts as a reference and a safety net. Then over 1. Remove the side part away from the center of the circle and lay it on the pads. No contact parts with hand materials must not be produced, otherwise the corners just chip off. And then you take a brush, wet the surface to be bonded. Spread the mortar in a continuous place and put the pack back in place referring to neighboring parts that have remained in place like beacons all this time. The joints between the parts are not yet filled, since we haven't installed the neighboring parts yet. Shrinkage of parts in height should only be performed hand pressure on your whole body. Don't use a rubber mallet under any circumstances, because the impact creates a microfracture in the slag. And after you have settled on a detailed seat, remove excess mortar carefully with a trowel with a wet sponge. If anyone still doesn't understand how to do it, then I suggest go to our website, link that will be in the description, and familiarize yourself with this procedure in more detail. Also on the website lots of other detailed information about installing and fabricating foundations. Perhaps at this point ends all the tricks of the trade with the complexity of installation fontaines. So from here on out you are just going to proceed by analogy. You will install the remaining 5 parts in the same way as first ones, then remove the 6 pieces that have guided you all this time. Now the benchmark for them is the first parts delivered. The only thing is, now you fill all the joints with mortar, pick out excess solution, form nice uniform seams, and sponge all the parts. If your parts continue, float due to a large layer of mortar and liquid mortar. I recommend using wood clay. Support the workpiece from 3 points, and after 2 hours remove the wedges, cock the hole, and sponge it off as well. Second layer of the upper edge of the fontaine. They are the heaviest and the hardest to work with. You have to do the same thing you did from the first level, only that this procedure should not be performed earlier than 24 hours. The first level is installed to allow the mortar to set properly. First example of the second level of detail. You also use a laser level and a tape measure. Check the flatness of the circle, centered on the rubber in the center of the pool. At the very beginning, and after we assemble the side of the pool, we also had a put in a pipe from the pool drain in one place, which we have looped at the night of the maximum water level to keep the water out of the pool. Then you can start leveling the inner walls and the bottom of the pool. for laying the mosaic pattern, we have put together a device like circular wall leveling. The first one is leveled in the usual way, and probably the most valuable thing I'm telling you right now, it's a circular assembly. That is something not everyone will tell you. After the walls have been seeded and leveled, we leave our PC for 7 days. In order for the motor to gain maximum strength, then proceed to waterproofing. And it's better to tell you about in detail. We use quality waterproofing material. We use a 2-part latex Italian waterproofing by Mapei, or the Russian equivalent by Birs, called Germolastic. I'll tell you right off the bat that we dilute the waterproofing for our work in any way. The manufacturer writes on the package of the dry ingredient add significantly, and you should get a sour cream-like consistency. Since the side of the fontaine is not a monolithic structure, we are obliged to waterproof with reinforcement, and as reinforcements we use interior grade 2x2 mm glass mesh that easily fits around all the inside corners of the pool. The waterproofing in 2 layers, and in some cases a 3rd layer is applied. If anyone is interested in watching the video about waterproofing, there will be a link to the video in the description, where we perform waterproofing of an artificial waterfall concrete art disc. After waterproofing, allow the surface to dry completely. This term, depending on the temperature and humidity of the air, can range from 24 to 48 hours. Then you can start cleaning the inside of the pool. In our case, it was a mosaic, and I'm not gonna tell you about that either, because it's a regular construction job, and whoever's interested, you can find all the information on the internet. I'll just say in 2 words that it would better to outline the walls with laser level, and the floors are laid without glue first, adjustable seams, and only piece at a time. The tiles are removed and placed on the adhesive to work on a sheet of thick styrofoam, so the mosaic stays in place. And after laying the mosaic, after grouting, we begin assembling the center section of the fontaine. Assembly technique for the part of the fontaine very similar to the assembly technique part. Simultaneously with the installation of the central part of the fontaine, we are putting together the piping, adjusting valves if necessary, and lay the lightning wires across the bowl, and that's up to you. In our case, taps were installed in 2 places to regulate the flow of water from other lion's heads and the top figure, and separate streams of water were directed into each bowl. We have planned for the lighting in the pool in 2 bowls and the upper jet of the fontaine. Lighting of the fontaine's upper jet is our specialty, and on this topic we also have a separate video on our channel. The next step is the installation of underwater lights and pumping equipment in acceptance. I think the photo will tell you how it's done. And the last and the final step is assembly of control and start-up cabinets for palm box. And that's where we have something to surprise you. Very often we have to kit in tight quarters, large amount of equipment, and this case was no exception. And at this faculty we decided to fabricate design a control cabinet. Again, so as not to have to go through a huge remodel, lifting paint stones all over the yard to lay cables. Plus I had to make room for a closet. And we came up with the idea of making an imitation garden lantern, inside of which is supposed to house all necessary equipment. Together with one of the Krasnodar companies that deal in stainless steel, we have accomplished that task. And this is the control cabinet. Finally, the grand lunch. Small water height adjustment using taps on each water jet and tilt angles. And this is the result that the customer has been waiting just 1 month. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already yet. Only exclusive information is posted on our channel, and you will definitely be number 1. If you see a new video, please post it in the comments. If you still have any questions, we will get back to you all. Well, that is all I have to say for now. Thanks, goodbye.